Growing up as a little boy in Warri, Delta State, Nigeria, I knew that I was living in one of the richest oil regions in the world. It was something you hear about quite often, actually. We had the sense of prestige, that we had something that was very valuable to the world. To validate this sense of prestige, we often had foreign workers in our cities. I didn't understand what it meant, but I was just proud to be from an oil-producing state. As I grew older, however, I saw many things that didn't quite make much sense to me. I often asked myself why we didn't have the development and infrastructure of an oil-rich nation. Like I would read about in places like Dubai. I often saw there were fuel shortages, power outages, and extreme poverty in some regions. Strangely enough, some of the most developed areas around me were the housing areas of foreign Western workers and politicians. It just didn't make much sense to me. In 2012, I remember the protests and strikes against the government because of the announcement of the removal of fuel subsidy. Everyone around me convinced me that the government is evil and anti the common man for its decisions to remove fuel subsidies. And I believed it without doing my own research. I just assumed if most people are saying it, then it must be true. This is a side note, but I have observed that one of the biggest tools for manipulating the masses most of the times is using an opinion held by a majority of the people that has an emotional appeal but no factual basis. Of course, I didn't know this in 2012, but I joined in solidarity with the protesters. And some political actors who wanted to use the emotions of the masses lit up more fire to the campaign by saying the removal of subsidies was to line the pocket of corrupt Nigerians in power. Of course, the political pressure was too much, and the then government of President Goodluck Jonathan caved into the demands of the protests and strikes and abandoned its plan to remove fuel subsidy. 10 years have now passed since 2012, and I now have a different view on the issue of fuel subsidy. A view founded in facts and not just emotions. Please be gracious enough to hear me out and make up your own mind. What is fuel subsidy to start with? A subsidy is a sum of money granted by the state or a public body to help an industry or business keep the price of a commodity or service low. In other words, the government covers the true cost, making sure the public pays a fixed price lower than the true price, regardless of how much the true price actually costs. And in the case of Nigeria, the commodity is refined petroleum. But this sounds like a good idea, you might say. Like it's actually helping Nigerians, right? The question though is, at what cost? A bit of a backstory. For those who don't know, Nigeria is one of the highest crude oil producing nations in the world. While Nigeria exports crude oil, it imports refined products from crude oil, leading to a shortfall in its gain from its natural resources. The solution naturally would be to set up refineries in the country. But so far, this has been a struggle for our government. Perhaps, maybe the reason is the increasing cost of subsidies. You'll understand what I mean shortly. Now, without refineries, the nation is dependent on importation of refined products like premium motor spirit or PMS to meet its growing demand. With the price of PMS rising due to the international price of crude, transportation cost, and cost of foreign exchange, pump prices at the fuel station would naturally go up. The Nigerian government, however, subsidizes it. They import it expensively but sell it to us way cheaper. In 2018, Nigeria spent 722 billion naira, which was about $2.4 billion then on fuel subsidies, but spent only 1.5 billion on healthcare. This is more than 50% more on fuel subsidies compared to healthcare. So why is subsidy bad, and what is the true cost to all Nigerians? Every year, the Nigerian government runs into a huge budget deficit. In other words, borrow money they don't have to fund annual budget. This could easily be avoided if the fuel subsidy is removed and the money allocated to other critical sectors. The government announced that across 2023, fuel subsidy will cost the nation a whopping 6 trillion naira. To put it into context, the allocated budget for education in 2023 will be the highest ever, and it's only just over 1 trillion naira. This means that the total cost of subsidies in 2023 will be 6 times higher than educational budget and 3 times higher than educational budget plus health budget combined. This cannot be sustainable. It was reported that the amount spent on fuel subsidy in the first half of 2022 exceeded oil revenue by 210 billion naira. In other words, Nigeria's income from crude oil sales, our great natural resource, was less than the cost of fuel subsidy by 210 billion naira. The government has had to resort to borrowing to meet up with subsidy payments owed to oil marketers, who are usually some of the richest Nigerians. It's no coincidence that some of the richest Nigerians are mostly in petroleum importation business, is it? They benefit from subsidies by inflating figures for oil import, and over-invoicing the government for the true cost of imports. They have used their political connections and influence to fight against attempts to remove subsidies by playing on the emotions of the average Nigerian, like myself in 2012. The truth is that the true beneficiaries of fuel subsidy programs are not the poor Nigerians struggling to make ends meet. The true beneficiaries are the politicians, high-ranking government officials at the state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, or NNPC, and also the Nigerian Port Authority and Customs. And most importantly, the true beneficiaries are the Nigerian business tycoons. So you see, fuel subsidy removal is actually fighting the corrupt, wealthy people in power and not the poor Nigerian, as the wealthy politicians will have you believe. When plans to remove fuel subsidies are announced, the poor should be excited and not protesting, as the wealthy, corrupt politician will always advocate for. You see, other countries do have subsidy programs, but this is usually in strategic sectors that increases productivity and economic activities in a massive way. Sectors such as education, healthcare, entrepreneurship, infrastructure, and digital innovation. Subsidies should not be used to finance non-durable consumption items like petroleum, and in the process increasing corrupt activities in the country. Instead of fuel subsidies, the government should invest massively in sectors such as education, healthcare, transportation, infrastructure, and innovation, and for God's sake, paying off our debt instead of just servicing them and making us poorer. There should be a clear communication to Nigerians that the removal of fuel subsidies favors the poor and eliminates one of the several perks that the Nigerian elite undeservedly enjoy.